It was a bright, sunny Saturday morning in Pinewood Hills. This was a small, quiet neighborhood where nothing exciting ever seemed to happen. Kids rode their bikes, dogs barked at squirrels, and the houses all looked pretty much the same, neat little boxes with green lawns. That's where Jake Riley lived. Jake was just a regular guy. He had a small house with a creaky front porch, an old beat-up truck that made funny noises, and a mailbox he'd painted himself. The mailbox was blue, and Jake thought it looked cool. He wasn't a loud person. He didn't throw big parties or blast music. He liked to keep things simple. He'd wave at the neighbors when he saw them, maybe say hi or nice day, and that was it. Jake figured that was enough to get by. But someone didn't think so. Someone was watching him way closer than he ever guessed. That someone was Karen Baxter. Karen lived 2 houses down from Jake, and she wasn't like him at all. She acted like she was the boss of the whole neighborhood. People called her the Queen of the Homeowners Association, or HOA for short. The HOA was a group that made rules about how houses should look, like what color your fence could be or how tall your grass could grow. Karen loved those rules. She loved them so much she'd walk around with a little notebook, writing down anything she didn't like. Got a flower pot in the wrong spot? Karen would notice. Left your trash can out too long? Karen would knock on your door. She had sharp eyes that didn't miss a thing and a sharp tongue that could make you feel small in 2 seconds flat. To Karen, Pinewood Hills was her kingdom, and she strutted around like she owned every inch of it. Now, Jake didn't care about the HOA. He didn't go to their meetings or read their long lists of rules. He just wanted to live his life, fix his truck, and maybe eat a sandwich on his porch without any trouble. But trouble was coming his way, and it all started with something tiny. Something silly. Something you'd never think could cause a big mess. It was a sticker. A little cartoon frog sticker Jake had stuck on his mailbox one day. He'd found it in a drawer, thought it was funny with its goofy smile and big eyes, and slapped it right on the side of the blue mailbox. That was it. No big deal, right? It was just a frog. It wasn't hurting anybody. It wasn't breaking any laws. But to Karen Baxter, that frog wasn't just a sticker. To her, it was a problem. A huge problem. And that little frog was about to flip her whole world upside down. See, Karen didn't like anything that wasn't perfect in her eyes. She wanted every house to look the same, clean, boring, and exactly by the rules. Jake's mailbox? It didn't fit her idea of perfect. The blue paint was already a little weird to her, but that frog sticker? Oh, that was too much. She'd walk by Jake's house every day, glaring at it like it was the worst thing she'd ever seen. She'd mutter to herself, "That's not allowed. That's against the rules." She even pulled out her HOA handbook once, flipping through the pages to find anything that said stickers weren't okay. She couldn't stand it. To her, Jake's mailbox was like a big, loud sign screaming, "I don't care about your rules." And Karen? She couldn't let that slide. Jake didn't know any of this yet. He didn't know Karen was watching him. He didn't know she was making plans in her head about how to get rid of that frog. To him, it was just another sunny day. He was out in his garage, tinkering with his truck, humming a little tune. The birds were singing, the breeze was blowing, and everything felt peaceful. He had no idea that Karen Baxter was about to storm into his life like a tornado. He had no idea that something as small as a sticker could turn his quiet little world into a giant, crazy adventure. But that's how it always starts, isn't it? With something small. Something you don't even think about. And then bam, everything changes. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She wasn't the kind who'd bake you cookies or ask how your day was. No, she was the kind who'd measure your lawn with a ruler to make sure it wasn't too long. She was the kind who'd knock on your door at 7 a.m. to complain about your dog barking one time. And now, she had her sights set on Jake. She didn't know him well. She didn't care to. To her, he was just the guy with the messy truck and the weird mailbox. She didn't know that Jake wasn't as simple as he seemed. She didn't know he had a trick up his sleeve, something she'd never see coming. But we'll get to that part soon. For now, all you need to know is this: Karen was mad, Jake was clueless, and that frog sticker was about to start a war. So, what do you think Karen's problem was? Why did a tiny sticker make her so upset? Was she just mean, or was there something else going on? Stick around, because this story is about to get really, really good. I'm not going to tell you everything yet. Oh no, that'd be too easy. I'll give you a little hint, though. Karen thought she was the smartest person on the street, but Jake? He was watching more than she realized. And that's all I'll say for now. Keep reading, because the fun's just beginning. Hey, before we go on, here's a quick question for you. Have you ever had a neighbor like Karen, someone who gets mad about the silliest things? Tell me in the comments, and let me know where you're reading this from today. Maybe you're at home, or maybe you're at school sneaking a peek. Either way, I'm glad you're here. This story's got some wild twists coming up, and I can't wait for you to see what happens next. Let's keep going. Karen didn't wait around. That same afternoon, after spotting Jake's frog sticker, she was ready to fight. The sun was still high in the sky, shining down on Pinewood Hills, but Karen didn't care about the nice day. She was mad, really mad. She grabbed her phone, put on her flip-flops, and marched straight over to Jake's yard like she was on a mission. Her face was red, her eyes were narrow, and she was moving fast. When she got to Jake's mailbox, she stopped and pointed at the little cartoon frog sticker like it was the worst thing in the world. "This sticker is against the rules," she barked, her voice loud and sharp. She jabbed her finger at the frog so hard you'd think she wanted to poke a hole right through it. Jake was in his garage, working on his old truck. He had a wrench in one hand and a rag in the other, wiping black grease off his fingers. The garage door was open, and he heard Karen yelling. He poked his head out, squinting into the sunlight to see what was going on. There she was, standing by his mailbox, looking like she was about to explode. Jake stayed cool, though. He didn't yell back or run over. He just leaned against the garage wall and said, "It's just a sticker, Karen." His voice was calm, like he was talking about the weather. He didn't sound mad or scared, not one bit. But Karen? Oh, she wasn't having it? Not at all. "I'm calling 911, she snapped, holding her phone up like it was a weapon. "This is vandalism." Her words came out fast and loud, and she started tapping on her phone screen right there in Jake's yard. She didn't even look at him anymore, she was too busy glaring at that frog sticker. To her, it wasn't just a silly picture. It was a crime. A big, terrible crime that broke all her precious HOA rules. She thought calling the police would fix everything. She thought it would make Jake take the sticker down and say sorry. She thought she'd win, just like she always did when she bossed people around. But Jake? He didn't care. He just shrugged his shoulders, turned around, and went back to fixing his truck. The clank of his tools mixed with the sound of Karen's voice as she shouted into her phone. "Yes, hello, 911? I need you to come right now. There's vandalism at 12 Pinewood Lane." Jake heard her, but he didn't stop working. He didn't run out to argue or beg her to stop. He acted like nothing was happening, like Karen was just a noisy bird chirping outside. He wasn't scared of her. He wasn't even mad. He just kept turning his wrench, fixing a bolt, and wiping his hands on that greasy rag. If you saw him, you'd think he didn't have a worry in the world. But here's the thing, Karen didn't know who she was messing with. She thought Jake was just some quiet guy who lived in a little house with a messy truck. She thought he was nobody special, just another neighbor she could yell at and boss around. But Jake wasn't just some quiet guy. Oh no. He had a secret. A big, juicy secret that Karen didn't even dream of. And while she was standing there, yelling into her phone about a frog sticker, that secret was already sneaking up behind her, quiet as a shadow. See, Jake wasn't the kind of person to make a big fuss. He didn't talk a lot or brag about himself. He liked his simple life, his house, his truck, his mailbox with the frog. But that didn't mean he was weak. It didn't mean he was dumb. Karen didn't see it, but Jake was smart. He noticed things. He paid attention. And he wasn't afraid of Karen or her silly rules. When she called 911, he didn't panic because he knew something she didn't. He knew the sticker wasn't the real problem. He knew something bigger was coming, something that would make Karen wish she'd never walked over to his yard. Karen kept talking on the phone, her voice getting louder and louder. "Yes, it's a sticker. A frog sticker. It's ruining the neighborhood." She paced back and forth in Jake's grass, waving her free hand like she was trying to shoo away a fly. She didn't care that Jake wasn't fighting back. She didn't care that he didn't seem worried. To her, that just proved she was right. She thought he was giving up. She thought she was in charge. But she was wrong. So wrong. If you were there, watching from across the street, you might think it was funny. Here was Karen, all worked up over a tiny sticker, acting like it was the end of the world. And there was Jake, calm and quiet, tinkering with his truck like nothing was happening. It was like a big dog barking at a little mouse, and the mouse wasn't even running away. But that's what made it so good. Karen thought she was the big dog, but she didn't know the mouse had a trick. A really good trick. The tension was building, even if Jake didn't show it. Karen's voice was loud, her face was red, and her phone call was serious. She really believed the police would come rushing over to arrest Jake for a frog sticker. She really believed she'd win this fight. But every time she yelled, every time she pointed at that mailbox, she was stepping closer to something she didn't expect. Jake didn't say a word about it. He didn't give her any hints. He just let her keep going, let her keep digging her own hole. Because that's how Jake was. He didn't need to shout or argue. He had something better. Something secret. Something that was going to turn this whole silly fight upside down. So, what was Jake's secret? Why wasn't he worried about Karen calling 911? Was he just brave, or did he know something she didn't? You'll find out soon, but not yet. I'm not going to spill it all right now, that'd ruin the fun. Just picture this, Karen, mad as a hornet, thinking she's the queen of the neighborhood. And Jake, cool as a cucumber, knowing she's about to get a big surprise. The air was thick with trouble, but only one of them could feel it. And it wasn't Jake. Stick around, because this is where things start to get wild. The next day, everything changed. It was Sunday morning in Pinewood Hills, and the neighborhood was still quiet, well, mostly quiet. Birds were chirping, and the sun was peeking through the trees. But then, a police car rolled down the street. Its red and blue lights weren't flashing, but you could tell it meant business. Karen Baxter was ready for it. She stood on her porch, arms crossed tight over her chest, watching that car like it was her prize. She had a big smirk on her face, like she'd just won the lottery or found $100 on the ground. See? I told you I'd handle it, she muttered to herself, nodding as the patrol car stopped right in front of Jake's house. She thought the cops were there for him. She thought they'd come to yell at him about that frog sticker on his mailbox. Oh, she was so sure she'd won. Jake heard the car too. He stepped outside his little house, hands shoved deep in his pockets, and just watched. He didn't look scared or nervous, not even a little bit. His old truck was parked in the driveway, still greasy from yesterday, and he leaned against it like he was waiting for a friend to show up. The cops climbed out of their car, two of them, wearing dark uniforms and serious faces. Karen's smirk got even bigger. She was so happy she almost clapped her hands. She thought those officers were about to march right up to Jake, point at his mailbox, and tell him to take that sticker off. She thought she'd get to watch him lose, right there in front of everybody. But then something funny happened. The cops didn't even look at Jake's mailbox. They didn't stop to stare at the little cartoon frog with its goofy smile. Instead, they walked right past Jake, their boots thumping on the pavement. They went straight past his yard, past his truck, and kept going right toward Karen's house. Jake tilted his head, watching them go, and a tiny grin started to pull at the corner of his mouth. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. But Karen? Her face changed fast. That big smirk she'd been wearing? It vanished like someone had wiped it off with a rag. Wait, what's going on? She stammered, her voice getting all shaky and high. She uncrossed her arms and took a step back, bumping into her own front door. The cops didn't stop. They didn't turn around to answer her. They just kept walking, right up her porch steps, their faces hard like stone. Karen's eyes got wide, and she started talking faster. No, you've got it wrong. You're here for him, she said, pointing at Jake. He's the one with the sticker. It's vandalism. But the officers didn't even glance back at Jake. They were focused on her now, and she didn't like it one bit. Her hands started to shake, and her voice got louder, like she was trying to make them listen. But they weren't there for a sticker. Nope. They were there for something else, something way bigger. Jake stayed where he was, leaning against his truck, that tiny grin still on his face. He hadn't said a word to anyone, not to Karen, not to the neighbors, not even to the cops. But he wasn't surprised. Not at all. He'd known this was coming. See, while Karen was busy running around, yelling about his mailbox and calling 911, Jake had been paying attention. He wasn't loud like her. He didn't make a fuss or tell everybody what he was thinking. But he had eyes, and he used them. He'd been noticing things, little things that Karen didn't think anyone would see. For weeks, Jake had watched strange cars parked near Karen's house. They'd show up late at night, just for a few minutes, then drive off fast. He'd seen shadows moving behind her curtains when she thought everyone was asleep. He'd heard her talking on the phone, real quiet, in her backyard, whispering stuff she didn't want anyone to catch. Karen thought she was sneaky. She thought no one noticed. But Jake did. He saw the packages she'd hide in her garage, the ones she said were just decorations. He saw how she'd look around all nervous before grabbing them. Little clues, like puzzle pieces, were all over the place, and Jake was putting them together. Karen never realized she'd left them behind, but Jake wasn't the kind of guy to miss a thing. Back on her porch, Karen was still freaking out. "This is a mistake," she yelled, her voice cracking. The cops didn't care. One of them pulled out a piece of paper and held it up. Jake couldn't hear what they said from where he was, but he didn't need to. He knew what was happening. He'd figured it out a long time ago, and now it was all coming out. That frog sticker? It was nothing. It was just a silly little thing that got Karen mad. But her getting mad was what started this whole mess, and now it was turning around on her. The neighbors started peeking out their windows. Curtains moved, and heads popped up, trying to see what was going on. They'd heard Karen yelling yesterday about the sticker, so they probably thought the cops were here for Jake too. But when they saw the officers at Karen's door, their mouths dropped open. Jake just stood there, watching it all, his grin getting a tiny bit bigger. He didn't laugh or cheer. He didn't need to. He knew the truth was about to come out, and he didn't have to lift a finger to make it happen. Karen's voice got quieter now, but you could tell she was scared. "What do you want? Why are you here?" she asked, stepping back again. The cops still didn't answer her questions. They were too busy doing their job. Jake crossed his arms and waited. He wasn't in a hurry. He'd been patient this whole time, watching, listening, keeping his mouth shut. And now, all that waiting was paying off. Karen had thought she was the boss, the queen of Pinewood Hills. She thought she could call the cops on Jake and win. But she didn't know she was the one in trouble. She didn't know Jake had seen everything. So, what do you think Jake figured out? What was Karen hiding with those strange cars and quiet phone calls? Was it something small, or something really bad? Keep watching, because the big surprise is coming soon. I won't tell you yet, I want you to guess. Jake's little grin means he knows more than he's saying, and Karen's about to find out she picked the wrong guy to mess with. Stick around, it's getting good. The cops were on Karen's porch now, and things were getting wild. The lead officer, a tall guy with a serious face, finally turned to her. He looked right into her eyes and said, "Ma'am, we're not here for a mailbox." His voice was flat, like he was just reading a boring list. "We've got a warrant. Step aside." He held up a piece of paper, waving it a little so she could see it. "A warrant. That's a big deal. It means the cops have permission to come in and look for something bad." Karen's face went white, like all the color drained out of it. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. "A warrant? For what?" she screeched, her voice so loud it bounced off the houses nearby. She wasn't yelling at Jake anymore, she was yelling at the cops, and she sounded scared. Karen took a shaky step back, her flip-flops squeaking on the porch. She didn't know what to do. Her hands flew up to her mouth, then dropped again, like she couldn't decide where to put them. The cops didn't wait for her to figure it out. The second officer stepped forward, ready to go inside her house. That's when Jake spoke up. He was still leaning against his truck, cool as ever, hands in his pockets. His voice was calm, like he was just chatting about the weather. "Maybe you should have worried less about my sticker, and more about those packages you've been hiding," he said. He didn't shout it. He didn't even look mad. He just said it, plain and simple, like it was no big deal. Boom. There it was. The truth hit like a thunderclap, loud and shocking, shaking everything up. Karen's eyes got huge, and she froze right there on her porch. The cops turned their heads to look at Jake for a second, then back at Karen. The neighbors watching from their windows gasped. Jake's words were like a bomb going off, and suddenly, everyone knew something big was happening. Karen wasn't just the mean lady from the HOA who bossed people around. Nope. She was doing something sneaky, something wrong. Turns out, she was running a little side hustle, a secret job that wasn't okay at all. What kind of secret? Well, it was all about those packages she'd been getting. For weeks, Karen had been telling everyone they were decorative planters, you know, those fancy pots you put flowers in to make your yard look nice. She'd smile and say, "Oh, just sprucing up the place," whenever someone asked. But those planters weren't full of dirt or flowers. Oh no. They were stuffed with stuff she definitely shouldn't have had. Bad stuff. Stuff that could get you in big trouble with the cops. Jake didn't know exactly what it was at first. Maybe it was stolen things, or something even worse, but he knew it wasn't normal. And he'd figured it out all on his own. Jake had spotted it weeks ago. He wasn't loud about it. He didn't run around telling everybody. He just kept quiet, watching like a hawk. He'd seen those strange cars pull up to Karen's house late at night. He'd watched her sneak out to grab the packages and hide them in her garage real fast. He'd noticed how she'd look around, all nervous, like she was afraid someone might catch her. Karen thought she was so smart, thought no one would ever guess. But Jake wasn't dumb. He saw the clues, and he put them together like a puzzle. He didn't need to make a fuss, he just let her keep going, let her dig her own grave deeper and deeper. And here's the best part, Jake didn't just sit there and do nothing. Nope. He tipped off the cops. That's right, he'd called them himself, quiet as a mouse, and told them what he'd seen. He didn't tell Karen, of course. He didn't tell the neighbors either. He kept it a secret, waiting for the perfect moment. And while Karen was busy freaking out over his frog sticker, yelling about rules and calling 911, the cops were already on their way for her. She'd been so caught up in being mad about that goofy little frog that she didn't even notice the real trouble sneaking up behind her. Jake had played it so smart, so smooth, that Karen never saw it coming. Now, standing on her porch, Karen looked like she might fall over. "No, no, no," she shouted, shaking her head. "This isn't right. He's lying." She pointed at Jake again, her finger trembling. But the cops didn't listen. The lead officer stepped closer and said, "Ma'am, move aside now." His voice was harder this time, like he wasn't asking anymore, he was telling. Karen's mouth opened, then closed, like a fish out of water. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know how Jake knew. She thought she'd been so careful, so clever. But she wasn't clever enough to fool Jake. The second cop pushed past her and went inside her house. Karen just stood there, staring, her hands shaking like leaves in the wind. Jake stayed by his truck, watching it all happen. That tiny grin on his face got a little bigger, but he still didn't say much. He didn't need to. The truth was out now, and it was loud and clear. Karen wasn't the queen of Pinewood Hills anymore. She wasn't the boss who could yell at people about stickers or grass or trash cans. She was in trouble, big trouble, and Jake had been the one to make it happen. The neighbors couldn't believe it. They pressed their faces against their windows, whispering to each other. "What's going on? Did Jake do something? Why are the cops at Karen's house?" They didn't know the whole story yet, but they could tell it was a big deal. Jake's frog sticker wasn't the problem anymore. Karen's packages were. And that little cartoon frog. It had accidentally started this whole crazy mess, leading right to this moment, the moment when everything flipped upside down. Karen's screeching got quieter now, turning into a mumble. "This can't be happening," she said to herself, over and over. But it was happening. The cops were in her house, looking for those packages, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Jake had won, and he'd done it without even raising his voice. He'd let Karen's own anger trip her up, and now she was caught. The big reveal was here, and it was better than anyone could have guessed. The cops didn't waste any time. They grabbed Karen right there on her porch, one officer on each side of her. She didn't go quietly, oh no. She yelled and shouted as they pulled her down the steps, her voice bouncing off the houses and echoing down the street. This is wrong. You can't do this, she screamed, her flip-flops flapping as she tried to wiggle free. But the cops were strong, and they weren't letting go. They walked her right to their car, opened the back door, and pushed her inside. The door slammed shut, and Karen's yells got muffled, but you could still hear her banging on the window as they drove away. Neighbors couldn't believe their eyes. They peeked out from behind their curtains, jaws dropped wide open like they'd just seen a magic trick. Some stepped onto their porches, whispering to each other, trying to figure out what had just happened. Jake stood by his truck, watching the police car roll out of sight. He didn't cheer or jump around. He just gave a little wave to the neighbors, same as he always did, like it was no big deal. Then, with a grin, he pulled out another frog sticker from his pocket, a bright green one with a goofy smile, and stuck it on his mailbox, right next to the first one. Just for fun. He stepped back, looked at it, and nodded. 2 frogs now. Double the trouble or double the victory. Word spread fast in Pinewood Hills. By lunchtime, everyone knew, the HOA queen was done. Karen wasn't coming back to boss them around anymore. No more silly rules about how tall your grass could be or what color your mailbox had to be. No more knocking on doors to complain about tiny things. People started smiling again, talking over their fences, feeling free. The neighborhood didn't belong to Karen anymore, it belonged to everyone. And Jake? He was the guy who'd made it happen. He didn't yell or fight or make a big show. He just stayed quiet, watched, and let Karen trip over her own mess. That's how he won. A few days later, there was an HOA meeting. Usually, nobody wanted to go. Karen would just sit there, telling everyone what to do. But this time, it was different. The room was full, and when Jake walked in, something amazing happened. People clapped. They actually cheered for him, slapping their hands together and smiling big. Jake didn't expect that. He stopped in the doorway, scratched his head, and gave a little wave. He didn't say much, just grabbed a soda from the table, popped it open, and sat down in the back. He let the neighbors talk it out, figuring out what to do next. They didn't need him to tell them. They already knew Karen's reign was over, and they were ready to make the neighborhood fun again. Pinewood Hills felt like home now, not a place where you had to follow a million rules, but a place where you could relax and be yourself. Kids rode their bikes without worrying about getting in trouble. People painted their fences whatever color they liked. And Jake's mailbox? It stayed blue with those 2 frog stickers, shining in the sun. Nobody complained. Nobody dared. Karen was gone, and justice was served quietly, simply, and perfectly, all because of Jake. So here's the thing, friends, sometimes the loudest people aren't what they seem. The ones who yell a lot, like Karen did, might be hiding something big. They act tough and bossy, pointing fingers and making noise, but deep down, they're scared someone will find out their secrets. And then there are the quiet ones, like Jake. They don't talk much. They don't fight or shout. But guess what? They might just be the ones who change everything. They watch, they listen, and when the time is right, bam, they make things happen. That's what Jake did. He didn't need to be loud to win. He just stayed calm and let the truth do the work. Think about that for a second. Next time you see someone picking a fight over something small like a sticker or a toy or whose turn it is, ask yourself, what are they really afraid of? Maybe they're mad because they don't want anyone to look too close. Maybe they're hiding something, just like Karen was with her sneaky packages. But here's the cool part, the truth always finds a way out. It might take a little time, it might sneak up quiet like Jake's plan, but it always shows up in the end. Nobody can hide forever, not even the loudest, bossiest people. That's why Jake's story is so awesome. He showed us that you don't have to be big or loud to be strong. You can be the quiet kid in the room and still make a difference. You can stick a goofy frog sticker on your mailbox or whatever makes you happy and let the Karens of the world figure out they don't run everything. So, what about you? Would you have put up a frog sticker too? Would you have stood up to someone like Karen, or waited like Jake did? There's no wrong answer, just be you, and don't be afraid to shine. Thanks for sticking with me, friends. I had so much fun telling you Jake's story. What did you think? Did you like how he tricked Karen without even trying hard? Drop your thoughts below, I really want to hear. And tell me, would you put a silly sticker up, just to see what happens? Maybe a frog, or a star, or a smiley face? Let me know. See you in the next story. Bye for now.